White supremacists are invading American cities to incite a civil war. I thought Antifa was going to invade the small towns. I guess I was lied to. Liberals are going to invade the rural parts of the nation according to conservatives, but all I see is right-wing nationalists going into blue cities to start fights. They're totally going to be intimidating people outside of polling places on election day, aren't they? We saw some of that in 2016 already, and I suspect they'll be on steroids this time around. Don't these people realize Trump hates them? To Trump, they and their mega-patriot families are poor, filthy expendables. At the same time, however, political structures designed to empower the minority of conservatives in America to rule over its liberal majority are maintaining an apartheid-style government. The Electoral College has put a conservative in the White House twice in the last 2 decades despite losing the popular vote, and threatens to do so again. The Senate majority belongs to conservatives who nonetheless control mostly rural states with a minority of the U.S. population, and the presence of the filibuster makes real change all but impossible even if Democrats were to retake the chamber. Gerrymandering ensures that the House of Representatives and state legislatures are stacked in favor of ex-urban dwellers and conservatives, with the result that even when Democrats do attain victory, those legislators are perforce more moderate than the majority of the Democratic base, and, of course, widespread voter suppression maximizes the disenfranchisement of urban progressives. Protected by these structures and with Donald Trump as president, conservatives feel that they are empowered to rule regardless of what majoritarian democracy would suggest. And then in discussion on the protests, you see a Karen asking, but why? Heck, the whole thing is a big Karen. Removed. A brief history of Hitler's rise to power. After a devastating economic crash, far-right agitators called the Brown Shirts would hold political rallies in heavily left-wing neighborhoods. In response, anti-fascists would counter-demonstrate. After a little bit, these demonstrations and counter-demonstrations would devolve into street brawls between fascist out-of-towners and the local socialists/communists. Even though the left was a distinct minority in Weimar Germany, the moderates in the center fell for far-right propaganda that these events were riots and the like, even though they were mere home defense operations to stand up to the deliberately provocative fascists. Since the moderates were so fearful of this lawlessness, in the election of 1932, they opted for law and order candidates, the NSDAP, championed by the bombastic yet safe Adolf Hitler because at least he wasn't one of those SDP communists. The point of the story is that this has happened before. Moderates always side with fascists when they feel threatened by the left, and they will again. Removed. Since lockdown, San Francisco has been overrun by fat, old, white dudes on oversized motorcycles who aggressively cruise around in gangs at all hours, revving engines so loudly as to set off car alarms. Police are well aware of it and do absolutely nothing about the noise ordinance violations. Everyone better get ready to give it to them. They obviously do not want to stop the escalating. At some point it will become a matter of survival, and hopefully it's not too late. r/Republican, r/Trump and r/Donald Trump are part of this call for violence. Reddit admins need to shut this shit down. Calls for the murder of peaceful protesters from hundreds of new, low-karma accounts need to be stamped out. Deplatform fascism or else 60 days from now we get a dictator. Just like the Russians have been stoking. Genuinely curious, if a civil war is started, what would be the role of the military? Would they answer to Trump? Groups of Weimar Republic Nazis going to left-leaning areas and inciting, then turning to the press and saying only we can stop these communists. Look how violent they are. Shootings in Austin, Kenosha signal the beginning of political mass shootings. As for Portland, what we are seeing there is not a demonstration that got out of hand but a sanitized version of something we've been seeing in multiple failed states for decades. A caravan of technicals pickups, filled with armed militia Trump supporters, heading out to ethnically cleanse counter-protest a refugee camp BLM gathering. This weekend on several GA lakes there were hundreds if not more boats on the lakes, more than I've ever seen at one time, all flying Trump flags. My very educated brother was proudly flying his. I'm baffled by it all. The only connection I've found is racism. If you see one of these clowns rolling through, document everything. Do not engage, it's what they're looking for. I think it's interesting that these guys have to organize and travel to make their presence known. They need people to come in from out of state to produce enough participants to make noise. Live in Idaho, and Ammon Bundy's group has been organizing gatherings of a few hundred people to interrupt government meetings or try to flood the Capitol building with numerous people not wearing masks. You really have to plan and organize just to get 150 to 200 people into a single spot on account of some threat to their country? The Valley has about 750,000 people, and 150 to 200 is the best you can do. The country is faced with a threat, and this is the best you can do? If 150 to 200 is the best you can do when the country is in jeopardy, then you guys really are a minority. Make no mistake, Idaho will vote for Trump just as they have for every other Republican on the ticket for the last 70 or 80 years, but their numbers are not as great as the news would have you believe. A very small segment of the country has taken it upon themselves to mobilize and give the impression that they are the majority. Thankfully, they are not. White supremacists who'd shoot a white stupid liberal as soon as they'd shoot a POC. Scum of the country. People who find this disgusting need to be prepared to defend themselves. These attacks will only escalate as we get closer to the election, and especially after, if their God King loses. These militia groups are the militia groups that the militia groups warned us about. I can't believe Donald Trump is the hill these people want to die on. Because their leader is living in the White House. Yeah, I saw their shitty lifted trucks in DC. Such cornballs, man, lol. Like that was your whole thought process. I'ma go get in my truck and drive far away to a place I don't live and start shit. Corn balls. There's a segment of the population that enjoys doing things differently from other people, not because it's the right thing to do, but because it pisses other people off. These are those people. Nothing you do will logically make them understand why they're wrong. They're just happy that you're unhappy, and will defend their position to their last breath. They don't give a shit what Trump does. They're just happy he pisses you off. Hashtag time for a general strike. The president has shown he will participate in stochastic terrorism to have his supporters take to the streets and murder anyone who is against him. Somewhere in hell Charles Manson is laughing. They probably just want unrest so Grandmaster Trump can claim liberal violence because white supremacists aren't enough people to win any kind of war. Trump supporters don't love America, they just hate the left. Look like ISIS. Pickup trucks, mounted guns, and a flag. White supremacists apparently don't know what happened to them the first go around. We need to get Trump the fuck out of here ASAP. Seattle resident here. Be ready, folks. We're next after Portland. Idiocracy was like just a taste of what our future really was going to be like. This country is full of idiots, just flat out morons. I wished I had the means to leave. You know who else drove around in trucks with flags that promote their ideologies? ISIS terrorists.